Hello, this is Andrea from Udacity. We're going to be talking today about exploring the idea of going to graduate school or upskilling, which might be more efficient for what your goals might be. And I am going to admit everyone and give us a moment to see if other people are coming before we start. You can also unmute yourself. I'm happy to have you ask questions, participate. We're going to be doing a couple of polls to give you a sense of how to make this decision, basically, or what you might be making the decision from. And I will give it like one more minute to see who might be showing up. And perhaps you all could let me know actually in this, that would be great. And I will try to see if I can see the, I'm always challenged with this a little bit, technologically speaking. I was going to say in the chat, if you could let me know where you're from and perhaps also what you are studying currently at Udacity, or maybe you've graduated already as well. We have about 6 people in the room with us. There's the chat. So in the chat, if you see the chat, if you could just let me know where you're from. My name is Andrea Mia, and I am from, or I'm living in Portland, Oregon. And I spelled Portland wrong, lovely. Okay, I think we will begin. So as I said, my name is Andrea Mia, and I live in Portland, Oregon. I'm a certified coach. My background actually is that I was in the film industry for about 17 years or so, doing producing and representing films, selling films, licensing films as well, mainly independent feature films and also some documentaries. And then I turned to coaching a while ago and worked with the MBA program at UNC Chapel Hill, and have been coaching mainly focused on creative people and executives, and now on techie people. And so anyway, I'm one of the coaches at Udacity and really happy to work with the population there. Okay, so graduate school. So today's agenda, we're going to talk about reasons why you might go to graduate school, both the questionable reasons and potentially some good reasons, what some of the goals should be in going to graduate school as well. And for some people, hi Doug, nice to see you. And for some people, whether this might be as part of a bigger plan to study abroad, and we can talk about that a bit as well. And then alternatively, the question is, do you need grad school for what your goals might be? And is upskilling going to be sufficient? And when we say upskilling, what are some of the options to get experience, basically, not just take classes, basically, not just take classes. I don't know how to set this up that everybody just gets admitted, but we'll see how I do here. Give me one sec. Okay. Okay, great. So we're going to actually have a little poll to begin with. And the poll should show up for a second here. Launch polling. What are some of the reasons that you might be wanting to go to grad school? I think the poll should be showing up on your screen right now. If you could see if there's any reasons on there that you would be interested in going to grad school, and just click on it. You just get one vote. That would be helpful. And I'm going to explain one of them to you, okay? Paper collecting. This is a particularly female thing to do on some level, and men do it too, but it's this idea that I need more papers to justify my life and to have the confidence to present myself. I need to collect these papers, certifications, degrees, and so on. This is a real thing. I'm definitely, I've done things like this myself. So paper collecting, you can be honest with yourself as to whether the part of the reason you're thinking about grad school or even getting certifications is because of the need to collect. Hey. So some good reasons here, some interesting reasons here. Kindly mute everyone. Yes, I can kindly mute everyone, I think. Give me a second here. Okay, I think everybody is muted now. Okay, so thank you. So actually the only one that pulled ahead basically was the challenge, which is interesting to me, because there's no reason that we shouldn't have a challenge. And I think that that's a wonderful reason, actually. Okay. So now I'd like to do another poll, actually, and talk about these reasons here. Could it be that you're thinking about graduate school because you think that a graduate degree is necessary for your next step in your career? Meaning not that it is, you've done the research and you've figured out that it's necessary, but you think that it might be. You want to make a career change, but you're not quite sure how. You have always been curious about something, X, Y, or Z. You don't like your current job, or you don't know what to do with your life. Or perhaps you are avoiding having difficulty in your job search. Okay, I just wanted to show you from the last one what the results were. And then, let's see. And then I would like to see if any of these reasons that I've just listed above here are any of the reasons that you're thinking about grad school. Okay. So I'm going to give this another moment here as I figure out how to mute everybody. Okay, so we have 50, I don't know how they do this exactly. I think I'm going to end the polling. So 4 out of 8, I guess, chose between you don't like your current job or you want to make a career change but are not sure how. And then you've always been curious about X, Y, or Z. And then the other one's not quite as popular. So I'd like to talk about these for a moment, though, because in some respects, these are all actually not really great reasons to go to grad school, okay? You think that the graduate school degree is necessary. We'll talk about this a little more later, but you need to know, is it necessary or not? Obviously, if you're going to become a doctor, a lawyer, a veterinarian, an anthropologist, somebody in academia, absolutely, graduate school is necessary. These are part of the credentials that make it possible. But for some things, it is not necessary. And so that is part of the research that you have to do, but certainly never to show up at grad school when it's not necessary and make that whole investment unless you have a series of other reasons why. So I happened to go to grad school. I went for film producing. Truth is, absolutely no reason I had to go to grad school for film producing. Was it a good investment? Not sure. Jury's still out, maybe. The networking was the reason that I went there, and because I study in a particular way, and that would be useful for me. But it is not necessary for the profession that I went into at all. It, like many other things, is a portfolio profession, basically, meaning you justify your existence by the experience and the work that you do, not by the degree that you might need to get. The other one I just wanted to touch on here is the reasons why these are all like not great reasons, basically, is it's a big investment. If you don't have a clear plan as to what you're going to do with it and why you're doing it in the first place, just because you want to change your job and you're not happy with your job, or you're not happy in your life right now, or you're just having difficulty finding your next job. And I know we are in the season of COVID right now, where perhaps some of you are not having jobs and you're like, well, maybe I should make use of my time in some other way and upskill with graduate school and fill that, because I'm not finding work right this moment. I would just question whether, again, this is a degree that's really going to move you forward and is necessary in some fashion, and whether it's worth the investment, because it is a big investment potentially. Even if the grad school itself is for free, you've got to live for 1 to 2 years, it's somewhere, and take care of your life in that way. And if money is non-issue, money's a non-issue, but it's a consideration for most people, obviously. Just sharing the results with you. Okay. So the next slide is showing some of the reasons why that might be good to go to grad school. It's absolutely necessary for your profession. It might improve your career. A graduate degree may open certain professional options that wouldn't be open otherwise. You are very curious, and this is a good way that you study. And perhaps you want to be a thought leader. And that plays into a little bit the collecting papers issue, right? But you could potentially be a thought leader without that. But there's a certain platform that graduate school or having a PhD, in fact, gives you that you might not have legitimacy otherwise, basically. So I want to talk about some of the practical reasons also that you might go to grad school. And this one I touched on a little bit a moment ago, learning style. And I'm one of these people. I learn best with groups of people. I'm a bit of an external processor, basically. I like the formal nature of education, the showing up to classes at certain times, and connecting with people in classes. That's how I learn best. One of the things you can think about yourself is when you have, in the past, learned something and it's really stuck in some way, like you really got it in your system. Was this something that you were in a class for? It was a formal situation? Or was it something that you delved into yourself, deep and by yourself? If you can learn in that second way easily, great. There's no necessity to go to grad school in that way. You can do that type of work yourself. If you learn better in a group setting, that could be enough reason that if there was a subject matter that you wanted to take on and that was useful for your career in some fashion, and you had the choice of graduate school or doing it on your own in order to get this information in your system, acknowledging that you learn in that way might make it worthwhile. If not, you're beating yourself up. So networking, extremely crucial. Probably the reason why you pay for any of these degrees almost more than the knowledge itself that you're getting, which is what is that network going to give you of your peers and of the professors and of the institutional network itself, the alumni network basically itself? That is probably the number one reason why you should think about going to grad school. And more importantly, one of the biggest priorities of what you should get out of the experience also. And it's not the thing that you're, I'm getting an A in this class or that class, whatever, and I'm being able to do these types of projects, and I'm learning how to research, and I'm learning how to code. All of these things are fantastic. They're all skills. At the end of the day, I talk to people all the time who are just graduating from school or have even been out for a year or more, and I'm telling them the same things. The things that you're supposed to take advantage of in grad school are the peers around you, the alumni network you have, and the professors, and the access that it might give you so that you become employable. And becoming employable is not only being able to do skills, but it's being able to have referrals, have people say, hey, Joe's a nice guy to work with. Joe's a nice guy to work with is worth the $50,000 that you might, put into graduate school if it gets you a job. Without that part of it, Joe's a nice guy to work with. You're more of a number like everybody else, basically. It's the same situation all the time. I'm seeing that people are not recognizing that the human connection in getting you to the next step in your career and getting you a job is absolutely 100% crucial. And it's how most people get work. So I cannot emphasize it enough. Obviously, I've just emphasized it quite a lot, okay? And the other thing is the availability of the coursework. It may be something that you need to study that is not available otherwise, other than in grad school. So one of the options is also going abroad for school. I'm sure that it can be tempting, and I just want to talk about some of the issues to think about with regards to this. So when I say abroad, I'm going to talk about abroad in two different fashions. People who are outside of the United States, let's say, and who want to come to the United States and get a graduate degree and therefore be able to, especially in STEM programs, be able to stay for a few years afterwards and work and have that experience in the United States. And also people from the United States who want to go to Europe, potentially, to get a degree which doesn't maybe cost anything, although it does obviously cost for living there. Or people that are in India and they know they want to get this degree from somewhere in the United States and go back to India, for example, with it, because that gives them a certain prestige going back that way. So there's a lot of different, when I say abroad, there's a lot of different abroads that could be at stake here. So, and some of the considerations you need to make are, if I'm going to go and get this graduate degree abroad, where do I eventually want to be? Do I want to go and get the degree in Europe, let's say, and I live in the United States, and come back to the United States, and I'm hoping that that credential and that that prestigious thing over there translates over here? The question is, does it? Okay, does it carry the same weight? And does it carry the same weight as if you stayed in the same area, basically, that you went to grad school in? That's part of the question you need to ask yourself. And also the opposite. I'm getting a degree in the United States, but I really want to go live in Europe. Have they ever heard of this school before? Does anybody care about it? Are there any alumni, in that area that are going to help me move my career forward when I want to move to India, or I want to move to Europe, I want to move somewhere else, basically? And I'm not trying to exclude parts of the world. I'm just trying to say that there's a lot of people who want to come to the United States and get a degree. and then either go home or try to make themselves settle in the United States. And there are a good number of people that think going and getting a free graduate degree is a fine idea, and it may be a very fine idea, but some of the considerations you need to keep in mind are, where do I eventually want to be? Is this degree going to help me there eventually? Is it prestigious enough, basically, to make a difference that people have heard of it before or not? I'll give you a little personal story about this that is kind of interesting, and just in the sense of sometimes it isn't what you expect. So I went to a very prestigious college, but it's a college that not a lot of people in the United States really know about for some reason. And in fact, it was a very confusing one from where I came from in North Carolina. The name of the college was Columbia University. And people thought, oh, that means you went to school in South Carolina. That means you went to school abroad in Columbia, the country. What does that mean? The responses I got were all over the place. When I went to live in Japan for a couple of years, people absolutely knew what Columbia University was. There was no question about it whatsoever. My degree was more useful in some ways, as far as prestige, et cetera, outside of our country than it was inside of the country. Just an interesting sort of story, but you wouldn't know it unless you start delving into it, basically, and figuring out what are these schools, what are the reputations, and where do you want to be with the reputation, basically, as well. Okay, so let's say that you decide that grad school is something for you to consider. One of the tips I wanted to make sure that you know and pay attention to is that you don't choose a grad school based on one professor and their work, and that you really want to work with them over everything. If the department does not have enough depth to give you the education that you want and be able to do the research potentially that you want to do, choosing it based on one person can be a really poor choice, because one, they can go away, two, they can die, three, they can change their area of focus perhaps. So and I have seen this happen way too often, for people choosing a grad school and then the reason that they chose the grad school goes away. So one of the things that you need to focus on if you have chosen grad school is really creating a target list. You see what I've put out in front of you as to how you would start breaking down these issues. One of the things I wanted to emphasize was I just noticed I have two number sixes. Number 6 and 7, which is student contact details and alumni contact details. I think these are actually two of the often not paid attention to and yet really important things to do when you're doing research into grad schools and to which grad schools might be the appropriate ones for you. And that is talking to current students, talking to graduates of the program, finding out from them what this degree is giving them or has given them, how they've taken advantage of it in some fashion, basically, or was it not very useful for them in other ways? Getting a sense of even, how engaged the student body is, or the alumni body is. How loyal are these people? How engaged are they in their alma mater in some way? This is work to do in advance as part of the decision as to which graduate school you want to go to. And people don't think that that's so important. They go off of, oh, I've heard of the university, it's prestigious, good enough, right? The department seems good, that's good enough. As I said before, one of the most important things you get out of it is networking. Test it, test their network, see if it's actually useful and that people are engaged in some sort of fashion. See that people are happy with what they got out of the school as well. I think if you talk to people, that have been recent graduates or currently, currently in the school, you get a better picture of not just what the work is about, but whether they feel like they are getting that their investment was really well placed in this institution. The only way to find that out is not in the literature and not in hearsay, but by actually talking to people. So I will emphasize number 6 and 7 in that way, that should be part of your process of figuring out what grad school would be useful to go to. Okay, so let's say you decided, okay, Andrea, you convinced me grad school is not for me. I don't want to do that for whatever reason, okay? What are the possibilities then for upskilling yourself and for getting more training in, furthering your career in some sort of fashion? So I would say that one thing you're doing right now in taking a Udacity class, absolutely one of the ways to do it. And there are many other places that you could possibly take classes and getting certifications. Google has just opened themselves up as a university of alternatives, basically. So there are definitely different ways to get many skills if we're talking about the type of skills that don't require a grad school degree. Like it's not about becoming an anthropologist, for example. There are many ways of gathering these skills. Projects and experience-based things, that's part of what Udacity gives you, which is fabulous, I think, is really focusing on the type of projects that are going to show that you can actually do the type of work that if you're heading in that direction. And she'd been looking for projects in different ways. Different ways that you can do projects other than classes, obviously. Freelance work. Doing an internship is another way to start showing that you can do the type of work that you want to go towards. An apprenticeship is another way of doing that. Internship, apprenticeship, depends on which country you're in and what the setup is. But there are, data scientists, there's a lot of people who are data scientists in the general Udacity family, basically. And being able to show projects, being able to really step into that space makes a big difference when people are looking at you and seeing how you were qualified. Okay. Here's a list also I just wanted to share with you of some of the freelance sites that are available online. And some of them are very focused on specific things, like you see the Experfy on the list there. That's one that's purely AI projects and robotics projects. Kohlrabi is for probably not any of you in the audience, in the sense that it really is for people who have their PhD and are wanting to do research in some fashion. The others are really more focused on work that companies need to get done, problems that need to be solved. And they're looking for freelancers to do them in one fashion or another. The other thing that the two on the list here are both project-oriented volunteer experiences that might be interesting for you to gather more experience again. Catch a Fire in the United Nations. They both have digital projects that need work. It's everything from front-end development to data science to design work, basically. Anything that could be digital that they need done. These are two sites to know about that you could possibly volunteer your experience and mostly get more experience for yourself. One of the other ones I wanted to share with you, sorry, this is a little whacked out there, is also, these are all different ways of freelancing, but being part of a group as well. So these are all sites that are freelance sites, but let's say I have a problem that I want solved and I need a designer, a front-end developer, a back-end developer, and maybe a data analyst to put it all together basically and figure out what my angle is going to be in a marketer. What they're doing is they're putting together all of those people under the banner of like CoMatch in Germany, basically. So all of those freelancers work together on that project and matches them all up basically for companies. So that's another way of getting more experience basically and being on their rosters. Okay. So question is, do you have any questions? Do you have any thoughts about this challenge of figuring out whether you should go to grad school or whether you should create a portfolio life for yourself, basically? I'm going to try to unmute everybody and ask that you ask questions. And also, please do share. Oh, and the question that Akshat asked is, will I be sharing this thing on, like, it will be online, I think within like 48 hours or something. So I will not be sending out something. Yeah, go ahead.
I had a question. So I agree that going to class, and for me also meetups and things, it's more about the networking. So the problem is right now we're in a situation where physically meeting people is very difficult, and then you're taking online classes. It's very difficult, and I'm trying to figure out, are there ways around that to do a little bit more networking? I just don't know how people do it. Yeah.
So you're talking about when you're in grad school, basically, and then how do you solidify the relationships with people that are in your classes, for example?
Yeah, like let's say I'm taking some Udacity classes. I mean, how do you network with people, or just in general? Because we're in a age right now where it's everyone's at home on Zoom, and if you're going to some place where you don't know anyone, it's nice, to network, but it's very difficult.
It has to be more intentional. That's what I'm finding with people, in the sense that you're not going to run into them in the coffee line in the cafeteria right now. That's taken out of the equation. So it has to be, even with Udacity students, one of the things I think is missing when people are connecting is they're like connecting on LinkedIn, like be friends with me on LinkedIn. And that's, to me, it's like collecting flowers, that are eventually going to die, and they were pretty for a moment maybe, or you got no value from them particularly. I think that the only way to actually start solidifying the relationship is to look at it, first of all, as a relationship. Look at networking as relationship building. You're looking for people that you have something in common with, that you can create the connectivity. Maybe they like soccer and you like soccer. Maybe they're really interested in the same subject that you're interested in a lot. And you want to—
But that's small talk chit chat. It's not a really,
that's right.
Really, you know what I'm saying?
No. It's actually, but doing informational type conversations with people to begin with, getting to know them, getting to let them know something about you as well. What I'm seeing is that a lot of people are doing that on Zoom, basically, or on Google Meets, or whatever platform, and they're requesting time from each other to sit down and get to know each other a bit. That's what I mean about the intentionality. You're not going to run into it just randomly. You've got to make educated guesses and say, okay, this person actually kind of looks interesting. I don't know why, but it does look interesting. Now I need to do some outreach and find out if we can connect on a deeper level. It's really, it is time and work. And that's why I'm saying it's like, and it's not going to come so naturally. Now, the other thing is that, like, my niece right now is about to start graduate school at UVA. And they're not going to be entirely online. And a lot of grad schools are not going to be entirely online, basically. And the other thing is that I've talked to a few professors now who teach grad students and undergrad students, and they've talked about this issue as well. And one a history professor friend of mine was saying that, yeah, he's going to be doing a little more group work so that they can interact with each other basically online. So they're going to have projects that they have to work with together. And so this is going to be the way they work together most probably. And that will give them the opportunity to start developing those relationships. And as I was saying with UVA, they're doing, some of the classes are going to be in person and some of the classes are going to be online, depending on the size of the class and how they can break it up. But it's
Yeah,
a
but
huge concern of hers.
yeah, it's in IT. First of all, you got a bunch of introverts, and then on top of that, the work is pretty much independent, for the most part.
Yeah,
It's not really a group work type, thing, basically. So, you already have like two strikes against you, and then you had the third strike of like COVID and Zoom, and it's like,
COVID, and it's terrible.
you know what I'm saying? So just,
I do.
I don't
I do. I think, I mean, I think what you're bringing up to some degree also is a mindset issue. And not that all introversion is mindset, but that trying to work on a healthy sense of curiosity about other people, and not asking the how are you question. That's sort of a meaningless question in a lot of ways. But what excited you this week? What was interesting that you learned this week? Asking them
yeah,
more engaging questions,
yeah.
to bring
But
people
I was
out.
talking with one guy from Switzerland, and I just remember now I'm recovering from a heart transplant. And one of my dreams is to get back into skiing and skiing the Swiss Alps. So maybe I should just ask him about that.
Absolutely. I mean, this is, one thing to remember is that these are people. That's all they are.
Yeah.
They're people with
Okay.
different interests and different experiences, and it's not all about networking around professional stuff. It's about connecting in different ways. And so, yeah, that you want to, get back into skiing again someday, and maybe in Switzerland. And what's the latest and greatest over there?
Yeah.
That's a wonderful way. Wonderful way. I'm not diminishing the difficulty of networking and the overcoming the shyness. I'm just saying that there are different tactics that you can take, and most people feel uncomfortable about networking because it feels like it's about taking from people. I want
Well, I
something.
feel like I had to put work into this, like I'm going out dating. Like normally I break the ice, I just have them talk about themselves. When they talk about themselves, they always have something to say.
That can work. You got to share something about you too, but actually that's not a bad attitude about the networking also, in the sense of looking for a way that you can help others.
Yeah.
You have these resources that you have your intelligence, you have the connections that you have different abilities, looking and you never know what you have that could possibly help somebody else, but having a little bit more of that mindset of, what could I do for others? And I'm going to cultivate curiosity about them as well. I think makes for the beginnings of networking, which is networking. It's very much the beginning, of a relationship. Um, it can move that relationship deeper, faster. Any other questions from people? I see Ashkat has written me, and I can't seem to get to the chat easily. Oh, shoot. Ashkat, oh, so good. He wrote that to people. Wonderful. So you're looking to change careers to another field. How do you get around the problem of not starting from scratch in the latter career, like going into an entry-level job, given that you have 6 to 7 years of experience already? Sometimes it really depends, and sometimes you have to be willing to somewhat start over. Here's some of the ways that I know to have that not be the case necessarily. One is, of course, cultivating the experiences that are going to, like we just went through on the upskilling list, that are going to show that you have the capability of bringing value already to a given job. What is work about? At the end of the day, work is just problem solving and people giving you money because you can help solve their problem. The more you feel like you are capable of doing that, as opposed to them needing them to invest in you before you can bring them value. And that's basically what an entry-level position is, that they have to invest in you to some degree to get you up to speed. The more you can show that that is not the case, the more you can possibly pivot to a higher level. And so one of the things to consider when you are doing a career pivot is so let's say that you wanted to be you were a software engineer and you want to become a data analyst. I'll just take that one, okay? Something to consider is, okay, where were you a software engineer? Where was it in the healthcare field? Was it in finance? Was it in I don't know, web, certain pet stores, whatever, okay? One way to pivot is try to stay in the same domain. So I'm going to be a data analyst now in the healthcare industry. I've had 6 to 7 years in the healthcare industry as a software engineer. I know a lot of what the concerns are that people have, especially in this area of healthcare that I was in. How can you bring that value basically to your next job? You can, if you can see where the connectivity is and you can share the connectivity and therefore show that you have value coming into them already because of the perspective that you have developed being in their domain already, being in their area already. So that is one thing to consider, Ashkat. Does that make sense to people? It's hard to know. Everybody's muted again. So, but yeah, staying in the same domain is a big one. Showing basically that you have the experience, that you have the abilities. You also have to be careful not to oversell if they're new abilities. I was talking to somebody today who has been in IT for 20 years. And he wants to move more into the cloud as if that's a huge change in some way. Well, he hasn't really worked in it yet, but he said he's familiar with it and people are thinking he's an expert in this because it's all lumped together with his IT experience. So they think that he's had years worth of experience in the cloud, but he doesn't. And so part of the things he has to answer is, okay, how do I show that I have this value anyway? Do I do projects basically to have the confidence to be able to say, yeah, maybe I haven't worked in AWS for quite a while, but I do know how to work in it. And I do have this rich body of experience behind me to inform that I do it in a good fashion, basically. So you can run into the other problem, which is so what he was running into is either he's looking too overqualified or it's entry-level jobs when he's really honest about how much experience he's had with AWS. And he has to find more the sweet spot, basically, being able to show that he has value and not overshoot it too much. Any other questions anybody has? Go ahead.
Do you know if Udacity alumni stay in touch through the system?
Not entirely. Now there are alumni, like there's a Facebook group and a LinkedIn group. And when you have graduated, that should be something that you ask the career services people about, basically, to be invited to. So I will just share with you my little experience with which I chose because I was coaching somebody who was interested in self-driving cars. He really hadn't met anybody who was working in the field already, and he was wanting to move from Goldman Sachs to move over to the self-driving car. And I was like, well, before you do it, you really need to talk to people in this field and find out what sort of skills beyond taking Udacity's class they're really looking for, and what are the options here. And I asked two people that I happen to know that were working at NVIDIA and Fiat whether they would talk to him about this. And they were, and I just said, they're fellow Udacity grad, you know, that's all it is. And they were more than willing to do it. They were like thrilled. Yep, great. People are asking me questions. Wonderful. Okay. So something to keep in mind is also like that a lot of people are really willing. You just have to make that connection with them and say, hey, I just did this also. I see that you also did this degree. I would like to, and I see even more about you that's interesting. I would like to have a conversation with you and learn something from you. Do you have 15 minutes that we could do a little Zoom conversation like Doug and I were talking about a little earlier? So
I'm tempted to meet people through a study side, but I tend to work in spurts, and I don't know if I could, if we could keep up with each other that way, since I'm working full time as well.
yeah, so it's hard to put the energy in
Right.
when you're doing that.
Well, it's hard to find. You're not on the same schedule. You know, I can put an hour and then I'm gone for a while.
You know, I mean, I think that's an interesting thing. Since all of the Udacity things are very much self-paced, there are people who take a really long time to finish some of the classes, and some people are pumping through these in a month and are really, really intense. So I think it's hard to know with these study groups what you're going to luck into that way, and you're probably very consistent with other people is that they don't finish everything in exactly the time frame that is expected, if there is an expectation in that way, in a timely way, I would say. So I don't know. I think that the study groups is an introduction. And if you had a group of 10 people in a study group and you knew you were going to drop off, I would think about 1 or 2 people that you think are interesting and then just pursue it outside of that time and solidify it outside of that time. Thank you for sharing. Oh, great. Good job, Doug. You're being an excellent assistant to me right now. He just shared the alumni group for the Facebook group and the LinkedIn group, which I could not gather fast enough to put out there for you. Any other questions? Does that help at all, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for asking. Does anybody else have any questions who would like to have
I have a
addressed?
question. Yeah. What do you think of part-time grad school? So you can still work full-time, but then do grad school on the side if it's supported by your employer.
Your question was, what do I think about grad school if it's paid for by your employer?
Yeah, part-time grad school.
I'm sorry, what kind of grad school is it?
Part-time. So you can work full-time.
Oh, part-time or
do
full-time.
grad school on the side.
Yeah. So I think it really depends on what is the grad school and what is the skill that you're taking in, and is that going to be useful for you? Or is it just that it's free and therefore, well, let me choose something. I don't know if the question is the part-time, full-time thing, whether that's
let's say it's useful and it's more about time commitment maybe.
And what kind of grad school are we talking about?
A good one.
No, I'm sorry. I meant like, for example, is it an MBA program or is it a like graduate school?
It's a CS major.
Oh, okay. I don't know that it matters hugely in that way. I think that some programs are oriented towards your pod moving along together, basically, and that pod work is really crucial. And I don't know with the CS degree whether that's the most crucial part of how you're doing it. So if it was an MBA program, for example, I think that is more useful when you do it either in one fell swoop, or with the same pod, that it's set up as a part-time thing and you're still a part of that group and you're not piecemealing it together, basically. With the CS, I don't know that that's the most important thing. So that was no answer to your question. That was part-time, full-time, either one could be great. It depends on basically whether you have the bandwidth to do something part-time and do work full-time. I don't think that networking-wise or learning-wise, there's anything inherently better or worse about part-time or full-time, but your bandwidth is really important to think whether you can handle it basically, or want to handle it, even if you could.
Mm.
Any other questions? Okay, so thank you very much for joining today. I appreciate it. And this will be up in about 48 hours, I believe, online. And good luck with your decisions as to whether you want to delve into grad school or we want to upskill. Thanks. Okay.
Thank you.
I'm trying to end this.